Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So the Supreme Court is hearing two cases that are very important in the fight to save women's sports, in the fight to save women's spaces, in particular in states that allow gender identity to determine whether one can participate in sports. These Supreme Court rulings will actually affect these states too, like California, Oregon, Washington State. The Supreme Court has the ability to shut it right down, regardless of state law. Male athletes who want to participate in women's sports, they identify as transgender, they are challenging the states that have banned males from competing in women's sports. They are challenging those decisions and are saying that they have the right to compete against girls, against women. One is in Idaho. The other is West Virginia. The case in West Virginia involves the athlete at the center of the protests of the middle school girls. There was a video that went viral and they refused to compete against this person. And their voices were certainly heard. And people began to report on this story. When people say, oh, it's just middle school, what does it matter? These girls are saying in no uncertain terms that to them, it matters. This was a few years ago, but at the time they were in middle school. This athlete is backed by the ACLU and has challenged every decision to ban him from competing against girls. And now it has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. The trans athlete filed a lawsuit in July 2021 at the age of 11, successfully blocking West Virginia's law that prohibits biological males from competing in girls' sports. Now, the court's decision not only allowed this athlete to compete against girls, it allowed this athlete to be in the same locker room as the female athletes. The judge in the 2021 decision, Southern District of West Virginia, Judge Joseph R. Goodwin, was appointed by former President Bill Clinton in 1995. This decision was appealed. In 2024, a federal appeal court upheld the block on West Virginia's law because the judge said that this is a kid in middle school on puberty blockers. So what harm is he doing competing against girls? What harm does it do? And this young male athlete has publicly identified as a girl since third grade, which is absolutely shocking. But this past July, the Supreme Court agreed to review the case, and oral arguments are scheduled for January 13. So the athlete is Becky Pepper Jackson. The law firm representing Pepper Jackson speaks about their case on their website, Lambda Legal. And this law firm actually held an event where it recognizes certain achievements, in particular within the LGBT community. And it was attended by Pepper Jackson. This young person is seen photographed with celebrities and received an award for, I believe, courage in terms of fighting to compete against girls. They said, we believe kids should be able to play regardless of whether they are trans. So the first argument they're making is that this community in this age range of 13 to 17 is a very small proportion, 1.4%. of all 13 to 17-year-olds make up youth sports, and half of those are trans girls, as they put it. That's a typical argument. We've heard it before. Of course, we know that it's not one-to-one. When it comes to the ratio of the number of female athletes disenfranchised by males who identify as girls. We know it's not a one-to-one ratio. One athlete can disenfranchise hundreds of female athletes. And with the case of Leah Thomas, Riley Gaines said that it was thousands of female athletes who were disenfranchised at the NCAA level. And then they say the facts show that participation among high school girls has remained the same or increased in states where there are inclusive policies allowing trans students to participate in accordance with their gender identity. In contrast, participation among girls has decreased in states that have harmful bans. I'm taking that with a pinch of salt. Don't know where they got that information from. And the reason we cannot trust this information is because they don't know what a girl is. When they say that a girl did this or a girl did that, they could very well be talking about a boy. That's how they operate. Crime statistics cannot be trusted because they attribute the crime of men to women. If you allow male athletes to take the place of girls, that is putting a man in place of a woman. So every time a male athlete participates in sports, there's a female athlete on the bench, or at home, even worse. There's a female athlete who didn't make that event because an extra spot was taken by a male athlete. There's a female athlete who didn't make the finals, didn't make the semi-finals. And it's not just one female athlete, it will be multiple female athletes who won't get to go to that event. Research studies that are cited to support bans never involve transgender athletes. They compare cisgender women to cisgender men, and that's just not true. There are studies that look at athletes who are on hormones, who are on cross-sex hormones. These male athletes who are on cross-sex hormones still have an advantage over female athletes. Even female athletes who are on testosterone.
A transgender athlete taking home first place in a middle school girls' shot put event, beating out her competitors by more than 3 feet.
Why is that a story? Well, girls from a rival school even protesting the event by refusing to throw. The track meet came just days after a federal appeals court ruled that the 13-year-old couldn't be banned from girls' sports.
So here with reaction is celebrity fitness trainer Jillian Michaels. Good morning, Jillian.
Hi, guys. Good morning. How are you?
Good. So what do you think about this story? I mean, it seems to validate common sense.
Okay. You've got two competing goals in sports, right? One is inclusion, which everybody can understand and get on board with. However, the second goal that's in direct opposition with inclusion in this instance is going to be a fair competition. And if that's your priority, if your overriding priority is going to be fairness over inclusion, you got to turn to the data. And the data irrefutably shows that biological males are 10 to 30% stronger, faster, have better endurance, better aerobic capacity across the board.
Even if, like this child who went through the puberty blockers and takes estrogen, has been doing that since elementary school.
Again, if we defer to the studies, and I sent several to your producers, which maybe they can put on the homepage, they show that even on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, the decrease in physical performance is, quote, trivial. That's what the data says. And to give you an example, if you look at a biological male, transgender female, with grip strength in conjunction with a biological female transgender male, okay, so both of them are on blockers and cross-sex hormones. The transgender female, the biological male's grip strength, was 17% greater than the female on testosterone and puberty blockers.
Yeah, and this, when you talk about contact sports, you talk about safety, you talk about volleyball, you talk about soccer. I mean, this is out of control.
Bridgeport High School female athlete Adelia Cross, who is a former track and field teammate of the trans athlete, when the two were at Bridgeport Middle School, alleges the trans athlete made comments to her that constituted sexual harassment in the girls' locker room. So the law firm wants to argue that it hasn't affected the participation of girls, looking at the numbers apparently. Or they're even arguing that banning male athletes from competing in the girls category is bad for the participation of girls, which makes no sense. But what they're not addressing is the exclusion from the podiums, from the records. We look down at the records in a few years' time, and we're going to see males, the names of boys. Exclusion from championships, from winning state championships and having that to your name. The exclusion of certain titles, having that to your name when you're applying to colleges makes a big difference. But instead, a lot of these girls are having to settle for being a second place finisher, third place finisher, or being off the podium entirely. So it's not just about participation, obviously. It's also about being given the accolade that is rightfully yours. And these girls are being robbed of accolades, robbed of trophies and medals, robbed of their spot on the podium. And another factor that the law firm fails to address is that of the locker room. Putting young girls in positions that they did not consent to, forcing them to undress in front of members of the opposite sex or to see boys undressing in front of them. They don't consent to that, and they shouldn't be forced to abide by that. That in itself is actually abusive, telling girls that they don't have the right to say no when it comes to undressing in front of a boy, simply because the adults in the room don't want to acknowledge biology, don't want to acknowledge that this person is in fact a boy, regardless of gender identity. So these girls are coming forward in light of the Supreme Court case. We have Bridgeport High School female athlete Adalia Cross, who is a former track and field teammate of the trans athlete when the two were at Bridgeport Middle School. She alleges the trans athlete made comments to her that constitutes sexual harassment in the girls' locker room. Cross, who is 1 year older than the male athlete, said she quit track and field. She quit the team at Bridgeport High School last year as a sophomore to avoid sharing a locker room again with the trans athlete once the athlete reached high school. But this has continued into high school, and this is excluding girls. Self-exclusion also counts when they feel they have no other choice, when they have to choose between undressing in front of a boy and participating in that particular sport. That is not a real choice. You're forcing them out of their own sports because they don't agree to undressing in front of a boy. So this is what the mother of Adalia alleges the trans athlete said to her daughter. When Adalia first told us, she told us that the trans athlete was telling her and other girls, "Suck my blank." The trans athlete was saying to her, coming up and saying to her, "I'm going to stick my blank in your blank," and also in your A word there, and you can read it. At different times, the trans athlete was saying these things to her. The mother said the comments were reported to the school. ACLU has responded to the allegations, saying that they are not substantiated. Our client and her mother deny these allegations, talking about the male athlete and his mother. And the school district investigated the allegations reported to the school by AC and found them to be unsubstantiated. We remain committed to defending the rights of all students under Title IX, including the right to a safe and inclusive learning environment free from harassment and discrimination. The Cross family's attorneys at Alliance Defending Freedom have responded to ACLU's statement, and it said our client has sworn under oath and under penalty of perjury in numerous cases about the events that took place between her and the male athlete. As a result of the situation, Cross had to step away from the sport she loved entirely and sacrifice a key element of her school experience to protect herself, which is absolutely heartbreaking to hear. So the ACLU hasn't responded to that, but the Cross family said that when they reported the alleged harassment to the school, nothing was done to reprimand the trans athlete to their knowledge. They told me they would do a full investigation into what I told them. And then all of a sudden, it was like nothing else was happening. It was done. And it seemed like they thought nothing of it because they didn't talk to us about it at all. They just left it there and didn't tell us anything else. So it just made it seem like, yep, it's done. And then we have Emmy Salerno. She alleges the trans athlete used intimidation tactics against her after she refused to compete against him during an event in the 2024 spring season. Salerno's protests came on April 18, 2024, when she and the trans athlete were in 8th grade. Salerno, along with 4 other girls, refused to compete in the girls' shot put competition. She said after we stepped out, it was an immediate personality change. He didn't want to talk to me. He just wanted to stare at me and just stare down. She also provided a screenshot of a Snapchat post which appeared to be sent by the trans athlete, showing a photo of Salerno with a caption that reads, Reminder that she has more testosterone than me. Salerno also alleges that the trans athlete followed her while they were at a local basketball game, making intimidating stares. And Adelaide Cross said that when she talked about the incident, people would tell her that it's normal, that this person is a girl, and that's how girls talk. I was told that he was a girl and that was what was normal. So I tried not to think about it for a while. I knew I was uncomfortable, but I just tried to push it out of my memory because I thought I had to deal with it. I felt like I couldn't talk about it because I was told it was normal. I didn't know how to process my feelings about it because she was gaslit, she was lied to, she was dismissed. It would be hard enough for a grown woman to be met with that response as a result of sexual harassment, much less a young girl. So when she had conversations with her parents, the severity of the incidents really started to hit her. I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't okay. And I was upset all over again. And it eventually turned into extreme anger. And she believes that this experience has impacted her in a permanent way, that she will never be the same again after experiencing this. And again, that is absolutely heartbreaking. But thankfully, she has parents who are supportive. She doesn't have woke parents who are telling her that this is normal. And I commend these girls who are giving these testimonies, who are letting people know that this is not okay. Why they push this, I do not know. And the Supreme Court needs to put a stop to this. And nobody's saying that a young boy who identifies as transgender cannot play sports. Everybody else has to compete in the correct category. It should be no exception, even for somebody with a so-called trans identity. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.